Good morning. Welcome to the chamber. Welcome to my channel. My name is David Okun, and please subscribe to this channel. Thank you to everybody who have subscribed to this channel, to support it, to share it with family and friends. I am in the UK talking about the cost of living and the help available in the UK. And these are actually income and also how to manage income. It talks about debt and all the other factors. There are sources of help from in terms of money, also advice and support in different aspects. The cost of living is about wealth. It's about how the government distribute wealth through policy, and it is a poverty-related. It's a crisis. It's a poverty-related problem to do with people on having low income, also failing to meet certain necessities due to lack of income. And the solution will be readjusting the public sector policies and processes. It's about really increasing the level of income in employment and also in benefit, in self-employment, supporting small and medium businesses, but also encouraging other people who have more money to work with the government to support charities which help people with money, also with their other educational facilitation services, how people should budget. All these factors put together, they are support given by the government and also given through the voluntary sector, statutory bodies, which is actually government bodies, also by the private sector in the UK. And if you watch this video, watch it with the other videos about in the UK about the help available to the citizens of the UK, people and also residents of the UK, citizens and residents, in the sense that citizens are actually people who are born in the UK, who are actually all people who are born in the UK and are registered as citizens of the UK. But also, if you are a citizen in the UK by naturalization, regardless of which country you come from, a resident is actually people who are allowed to live here legally. So if you have those status of living in the UK also, as of frequency, there are eligibility criteria which is looked at to assess whether you can get help of any sort. Every help costs money, so every help needs funding by the government, and these are some of the issues I will discuss: policy issues, also project issues, project viewpoints, including practical support being given by the government. And we look at different elements. They are complex, but if you want help, the first place to go to identify where help is in the modern world, go to the internet. And in the UK, go to gov.uk and go, that is the government, UK government website, which is actually national. UK is composed of England, Wales, Northern Ireland, and Scotland. These are actually the United Kingdom. Great Britain includes England, Wales, and Scotland. So all these countries, especially England and Wales, are similar policy and outlook, and also the laws are similar. And Scotland is fairly distinctive. There has been devolution involving England being separated from Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. These countries have slightly different ways or outlook of providing support or policy and also governance. I will be looking at this in addition to the videos I've already recorded. Once again, thank you to everyone who have been supporting, subscribing and watching the videos, leaving comments and participating. We are 1 year old. Today we are in December. We started in December last year and talk about the cost of living, but we have been talking in different ways. If you watch the rest of the video, you will understand how we have been approaching the problem of cost of living. Because sometimes we look around the world because of globalization. What is happening in the UK is also happening in other countries similarly. The especially in Europe, where Britain is located. Policies and practices in the United Kingdom is similar to what happened in Europe. Equally, when you look at the globe continent of Europe, you look at America, Asia, Africa, Oceania, these are actually the key continents because of globalization, and within globalization there is harmonization and also cooperation between states. And you find similarities, which is actually helpful. If in your whichever country you are, the first step is to actually visit the website, and then you find information from there. And if you know where these organizations are, you can contact them directly. Visit them. In the UK, if you go to the public website of Citizen Advice, in addition to the government website, you will find a lot of information where help is available. It is not easy to get this help because the government is restricting this help because of lack of funding for the public sector. And we have discussed this elsewhere. We will be discussing specifics going forward. Provided enough background for almost a whole year. But now I'm coming back to the UK. And if you live in a country and you are interested for me to do a research in your country, then I will try to do it if I can. And as always, doing research is costly, but for now, I will be depending on what I find on the internet and also the experience I have about dealing with these things as an advisor. This is not an advice, this is actually a discussion about this topic to highlight the issues so that people are aware, because there are always, even in the UK here, there are situations where there are so many different types of help people are not aware of. And as part of this objective is actually to highlight where help is, so that people who may need help should do their best to seek help. And like I said in the other videos, and as I said consistently, more and more getting help from government is quite challenging. But you must do your best and try. When I talk of help, actually help include something called benefits in the UK. If you live in the UK, you know the benefits, it's like the welfare benefit. But sometimes people don't understand that most welfare benefits actually are grants, and when it is grant means you don't pay it back, it's given to you. But benefit in broad terms is for those who do not work, people who are sick, pensioners, and children. And also people who are actually pregnant, you can get benefit if somebody dies, bereavement, but also other tax credits from the tax offices. So there are different aspects of support. But my take on benefit is that the government should change the system and streamline benefits, because they're so fragmented. Even the funding is extremely fragmented. There are so many organizations providing help that so many that even finding organizations sometimes get lost in translation. It takes a lot of time actually to look for these organizations, and a lot of people are not even aware they are there. A lot of private companies like energy company, water companies are actually giving grants if you're in debt with energy. Energy include mainly in the UK is gas and electricity, but there are other aspects of energy component which goes through. This is the process. It's not a sprint. Is a marathon. So bear with me. And my encouragement is that broadly, the best thing for you to do is to actually get help, understand the problem, how it is caused. Cost of living as a crisis caused by poverty, and poverty is created by the government, which actually fail at policy. Because the reason I accuse the government of creating poverty in the UK, but also in countries similar to the UK, is that there is a lot of wealth in the UK, but this wealth is concentrated in the hands of the few. The many are actually deprived deliberately, in my opinion, by the system concentrating wealth deliberately into the hands of the few, and the majority are increasingly being impoverished because the national cake is not divided equitably. There is an extremism involving capitalism and privatization, the marketized system of society. I've discussed this broadly, and if you watch the rest of the video, get the education. What I do as I speak, I learn to solve problems. That is how life is. I encourage people to get information if there's a situation in face. I think that the cost of living involves essentials of life: food, energy, housing, healthcare, and education. All these are actually factors of welfare in Britain, also across the globe, because Britain actually is the leader of the modern world in terms of finance, in terms of economic management, managing the system of capitalism. So we need to really have a good idea what this involves. So, for example, in the UK, we look at energy bills. Energy bills is what you are charged when you are in a property. The type of property you are in, such as living in the government property, and you pay your bills to the local authorities. But also there are some charities who provide housing for the residents of the United Kingdom, and people who live in the United Kingdom who are actually being housed, accessing housing within the local authorities. In the UK, we refer to the local authorities normally as council. And generally, when somebody says they talk about the council, they actually talk about local authority. Local authority is actually developed a system of government from decentralizing the power to the local people, so that people can access services and other infrastructures locally. It's something called in politics localism, which many people will be familiar with. So if you live in the UK, go to your local council website, and all this information I'm talking about are on the council website, especially on the cost of living crisis. Places like Food Bank, where you go and get free food. The process is there, the eligibility criteria is there. You get advice from organizations such as Citizen Advice and other organizations. The links are there, especially if you visit the website local Citizen Advice, because there are so many Citizen Advice centers which are actually independent of of Citizen Advice as a national entity. These are actually funded through various means. Citizen Advice itself finance local citizen advice up and down the country, especially in England, in Wales. Like I said, in terms of policy and practices, they are quite similar in their outlooks and orientations, and they are slightly different in Northern Ireland. If you live in Northern Ireland, the policies there and practices are significantly different, but only in terms of superficiality. Fundamentally, these things are the same, and also in Northern Ireland. Outside the UK, it's quite similar also in Europe, America, and in Asia, in Africa. In Africa, it's significantly different because when I say Asia, I mean the Middle East as well. Africa is very different because mostly you could argue in Africa that there is no welfare benefit, but there could be other benefits like education, healthcare, and public transport. But these are actually distorted, especially now, because of different factors. If you want to find out about Africa, go online. But also, if the system of government your country where you are able to access your local authorities, councillors in many African countries. They are called councillors. The system are quite similar with with Europe and the UK. And there are also central systems. There are also local leaders like members of parliament and also mayor and all these councillors and RDC system. All these or district commissioning, but mainly council, local authorities are actually the main people to approach, ask them what they have, go online, talk to people also on the street, especially in Africa, where the rumors are. Both there, especially during COVID-19, there were attempts by African government to provide some help when people were in the lockdown. And I would say about Africa that I've said it before. If you watch the rest of Africa, my video on Africa, Africa needs more support from the global community to provide welfare, especially the funding from the IMF and the World Bank. They should pay attention to helping Africa. This video will be watched by people in the UK and also across the globe. That's why even if I'm talking about the UK, I'm attempting to kind of link what I'm talking about in the UK to the rest of the world so that people can see the relevance. My stance is actually to on the basis that the world is globalized. What we experience in one continent is also experienced similarly in the other continent. So this logic you have to remember it because it's quite important. It's so easy to dismiss information in the United Kingdom as being United Kingdom specific, which it is. But in broad terms, it is quite similar in terms of practice in other countries, especially in Europe, Asia, and America. Africa, as I said, is instinctively different because of infrastructural failure, and which needs to be strengthened. But it's going to be very complicated because Africa is bypassing other elements of progress. If you go to Africa, you find traces of privatization as never seen before. Schools, hospitals, and also the system of health. Although in Africa, the African people still have access to land, but more and more the state is putting pressure on the population to try and take these lands away. And also, if you are to grow your own food, you need a lot of support by the government providing technology like tractors and seeds. They are trying, but it's so difficult because Africa do not have any money. They get money from the IMF and the World Bank in terms of credit, which has to be repaid. This is actually a problem in Africa, but also a problem across the globe because the World Bank and the IMF is the one funding even Britain, even Europe, America, and all these developed countries. So this is actually a problem. Also discuss about the financial crisis which happened in America between 2007 and 2008. The credit system is a major problem in terms of income, in terms of national income, which is actually credit. Nation states are depending on borrowing, which shouldn't really happen, but it's happening. It's something we need to really pay attention to. Income from the government can affect income of individuals, in households, in communities. And this is the kind of thing creating the cost of living crisis. They are quite complex. I will try my best to simplify it. And the cost of living being triggered as a crisis by the problem within the energy sector. And the first aspect of impact of problem arose with energy bills in the UK. And like I said, people are now struggling. The government have been giving things like household support. Household support is a form of help, specifically to address the cost of living crisis. But there are other grants, some of them called discretionary housing payment, which you can get from the council, local authorities. You get discretionary housing payment as a grant to help if you are in debt with your rent arrears, especially if you are in public building, but public property. Public property actually property given for people who are homeless. And there is also a problem there in terms of allocating this property, because the criteria is changing all the time to make it harder for people to access public housing. Public housing, when it referred in the UK as council property. Council property is secure in terms of housing status. Security of tenancy means it is harder for the authorities to evict a tenant, because this actually a policy is intended to help people in this country who cannot afford housing to alleviate homelessness. But now, because of the government policy on public sector, it has been privatizing the economy, which means funding is drying up and there is shortages of housing. The government should be building new houses to accommodate more people. Instead, the government is trying to change the way it defines homelessness, so such that actually the majority of people now in the UK who are homeless are excluded from accessing council property, which is what the government should be providing for homeless people in the UK. Council property is secure, which means you live there for life permanently. And also there is something about succession. Succession means when you die, your children, or especially your partner, if you're married, or your partner in marriage will succeed, or your partner you live with as if you are married in the UK in terms of civil, in terms of matrimony, in terms of family system, in law. When you live with someone in the UK, you're married as a wife, husband, or partner, or civil partnership, or you are actually living with them as if you are married. Then when they die, especially when you're in a relationship with somebody and you're given a property, or you rent it privately, or you buy it, you buy it as outright. People who buy property outright will have to pay something called council tax to this property. Whether you're renting or you're buying, you have to pay council tax. And council tax has become a problem because the cost of living also impacts in council tax. Council tax is something which is actually costing us all in the UK. And when you don't pay council tax, you get into debt. And these are actually priority debts. They said that council tax, if you don't actually pay council tax, in principle, you can go to prison. You can be, taken to prison if you don't explain properly why you are not paying council tax. So it is mandatory. It is statutory. It's a very bad taxation in my opinion. Especially taxing people who live in a property, even if they are renting it, even if they don't own it. I feel that big businesses, at least big businesses, corporations, multi-billion housing facilities should be working with the government to provide housing, affordable homes. This is not happening. Rich property and entrepreneurs, businesses in the UK are focusing mainly in building mansions for the super rich. So you find that one property may be costing millions. I wouldn't say billions, but millions, tens and hundreds of millions of pounds in the UK. And this is for multi-millionaires, for multi-billionaires. And these are for the few, because millionaires form about 10% of the population in the UK, and they own over just under 50% of the wealth of the UK, which is a major problem. It's the kind of inequality created by a system of capitalism, which is actually left to run riot. Mention this, and it's so easy for me to stray into those areas, but it is necessary so people begin to understand why these problems are happening. It is so important for me to talk about the help available and also point out why although these help are there, because of privatization, because of lack of funding, privatization means the government is no longer willing to support public sector. I have said elsewhere, if the government does not support the public sector, people who work for a living cannot access anything, including food, including energy, water, housing, education, access to justice, healthcare, education. These are actually provided by the public sector. And the government is privatizing the public sector, selling it off to private companies. Now, if they sell that, then unless they can give ring-fence funding to these private companies, to whatever money they give to whoever is running, because there are three sectors to the UK economy, and this is probably the same globally. There is the first, second, the third sector. The first sector is a legal entity or organization, is business. The first sector is actually the statutory entities, which are actually public bodies, and the second one is actually private companies, including the big corporations. The third is the voluntary sector or the third sector. These are in terms of law, in terms of identifying entities. These are actually three aspects. Within these, there are actually so many different departments, also whole sector. But for legal analysis, you only use three sectors: public, private, and something called non-profit or not-for-profit businesses. These are all businesses which is now actually operating globally, increasingly globally. If you live in Africa, you know about something called NGO, non-governmental organization, or CBO, community-based organization, which is actually the same, but NGOs are actually more corporate, they're bigger, and CBO are actually smaller. These are charities, the third sector of the economy, which I say is implicated globally. These all get funding from the state, directly or indirectly. Even private corporations get funding from the state indirectly, because the government has to invest in infrastructure, also manage policies of money, and policy of taxation, policy of borrowing, and all these actually support the system of the economy, which support big corporations and also small and medium businesses, and people who are employed in the lower and the middle sector are called the workers who work for a living as in employment, which is actually facing also a problem, because with privatization, it means increasingly the British people, in the same way as the rest of the globe, increasingly they have to work within the private sector. The third sector is actually a form of hybrid entity, which is actually created as a bridge between public and private. It is actually an infrastructure. The third sector is an infrastructure designed to support or even accelerate, facilitate privatization. Privatization is when public entities are turned into private entities. Private entities are owned by individuals, and it is associated directly to the system of capitalism. And capitalism actually argues for free enterprises, which is actually at the core of the market economic system, which is actually dependent on demand and supply to regulate pricing and also availability of products and services, goods and services, which is what happened with the energy sector. When there is disturbance in the market, creates crisis within the economy, and this is actually this disturb the demand and also the supply, and this actually affect prices. Prices goes up with if there is disturbance in the balance of the economy, prices goes up, and if supply goes down, and consumers have to pay more. And this is what happened with the crisis, including the crisis of the war in Ukraine, but also in terms of food in other sectors. The COVID-19 also created this problem, but also Brexit created this problem. And all the other crises, including the 2007, the credit crunch, the global financial crisis. Any crisis happening in society, including even wars such as happening now in Israel, in the Middle East, will, one way or the other, exacerbate the problem across the globe, because you see, we are a globalized society. One event, one crisis in one country impact on the globe. Will be repeating this point in every video, because sometimes people come and they haven't seen the other videos, so I have to repeat some of the points so that people don't miss out entirely. My aim today is actually to look at the United Kingdom specifically. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't subscribed. Support it and share it with family and friends. Leave a comment below. Click the notification bell and click like to support if you like the video. If you don't like it, support it anyway. Somebody somewhere else will also benefit from this. If you feel you don't benefit, still support this channel, because I believe somebody somewhere will benefit from it. And leave a comment below if you think it can be improved in some way, or if you think something else can be done which may or may not suit your interest. So we are in the process of looking at the factors creating the cost of living crisis. An example, like I said, is energy bill in the UK, which I intend to really focus on these specifics. Energy bill is a major issue. If you get into debt with energy bill, it becomes a priority debt. So it is also a priority bill. And the best way is to actually try and pay attention to these elements. Don't ignore your debt, don't ignore your bill, pay them as much as you can. The best way, actually, if you're struggling with any debt, including energy bills, to negotiate with the creditor. Creditor is actually your supplier. In this case, in the UK, organizations like British Gas and all, there are so many energy companies. If you go online, there are so many energy companies, and this is some of the problem to do with marketizing essential utilities like energy, because you see, these things should be provided by one company owned by the government, so that, because these things are not supposed to be for businesses. The energy is not supposed to be used to enrich the super rich, and that is happening now under privatization, because these facilities are privatized. That's why food is now creating poverty, extreme poverty. Housing is creating extreme poverty. All the housing in this country should be public housing from the council. Every single one of them, especially now with technology. The council can produce and can actually provide high standard equal to any standard. All you need is actually money. You invest in public housing, and all the housing. If the government is going to give money to private companies, these private companies should provide a property at no extra cost. They should not make money from public money. If that's what the government wants, to privatize basic necessities like housing. Now, there should be two types of economy in the UK and across the globe, because we live under capitalism. The super rich and people who feel they can buy property on the market outright, these people should be managed by a different type of economy, which is the private sector. Private sector is actually for rich people. And rich people can afford to buy a house. Even if they borrow because they want to borrow, not because they need to borrow money. But the poor people, to buy a house, they must borrow money because they cannot afford it. I mean, the average pay in the UK is about £50,000, and that's also my overestimation. The average property in the UK is about 300,000. Now, how long is it going to take you to save 300,000 pounds. It's going to be the rest of your life, because people who work for living are actually in debt. That's why when we talk about debt, debt is a common factor of the cost of living crisis. You're in debt already because you use credit card, and credit card is a major factor now. People rush to credit card. If you go to a supermarket, there are store cards which are actually credit cards. There are credit cards. That's how the banks make their money, by giving credit even to people who might not be able to afford. So this is now a crisis which is actually created by the market system, where everything is up for sale. I don't know what else is being solved. One day, people will start selling their body organs, their body parts, which at the moment is not happening, but it might if we don't get technology quickly to produce the body parts. That such technology may not be available in the next 200 years, maybe 100 years. But coming back to the real world, there's a lot of selling and buying. Everything is up for sale, which is a behavior encouraged by the UK government, a behavior encouraged by the government around the world. Because if we always think about money, and we no longer think of people, yet we focus on privatization. Everything has to be privatized, including food, including energy. The only thing which is about to be privatized is actually air. Because air quality, if you live in cities, there is a high level of pollution now. I think there is only 7% of purity in the air now in big cities, especially during summer when the air is so polluted. We are now selling water, which we're not supposed to sell. Now in the UK, water is not a priority bill because your service will not be disconnected. Energy is a priority bill because, and if you get into debt, if you fail to pay your bill, your service is going to be disconnected. Which means you will not have electricity, you will not have gas in your property. That means gas. So you have to really take your bill very seriously. This is nothing to scare you. There is help given by the government. People who are on benefit, that means if you're on benefit, it means you're on low income. And with water at the moment, but I think it is going to change. It's going to be a priority debt very soon, in the next 5 to 10 years. If the government doesn't change the way it actually operates the economy, these things can be privatized for the rich. Water, food, energy can be, and housing and health, public transport can be privatized for the super rich. But if you work for a living in the lower and the middle class, you should be depending on the public sector. I've been saying this over and again. That is the easiest way to solve the crisis of the cost of living, which is actually a symptom. Because if you think of the cost of living, it actually affect everything I'm talking about, impact on the cost of living, including energy prices. Because energy prices have gone up, so it's expensive. It's creating a crisis. Even if it comes down, it's going to still be a problem, a challenge. People will still be in debt with their energy bills. So if you're in debt with your own energy bill, you have to negotiate with your supplier to sometimes maybe give you breathing space. These are actually some of the things you can do. They are actually, when we begin to talk about debt, and which we are not talking about, we're going to provide detail as a system of indebtedness. And there are also situations involving finance. Finance is more to do with how you get your income for, say, doing business, or income for managing your bills at the basic level. And income, like I said, is employment, self-employment. If you're a big business, then you can call it investment if you want, because these are actually businesses owned by shareholders, multi-millionaires and multi-billionaires who own this business in shares. And also small and medium business are more on the poorer side of business, but still considered business. They are actually more, the function of this are actually to build infrastructure, business infrastructure. They always get taken over by the big corporations. It's something called corporatization in the modern economy here in Britain and across the globe, where small and business are now closing down. So in the next 10, 20 years, we are going to have less and less small and medium businesses. We are going to have corporation. And in the future, in maybe 100 years, all the corporate empires will close down anyway. The economy will shut down. And then we will enter the age of technology. And that will be a good thing, because technology will produce goods and services at no extra cost. That will be the end of economy. Economy involves selling and buying, as in trade. So trade will stop when technology matures. We don't know when, but for the future there is hope. And I have said in the other video also that technology is giving hope to humanity, because scientists are now researching on the problem of aging. The scientists have discovered that human beings actually die of old age. Old age is actually, human body is not designed to age at all. According to science, this is scientific information. It sounds like science fiction, which is understandable because it's still work in progress. They're doing research. There is no aging. We should not be aging. And aging is the number one killer of people. If you are born to die because of aging. Otherwise, you would presume that you are not going to die, because if there was no aging, there's a presumption you're not going to die. But there's also a second dimension to mortality or immortality in that matter. Every life is about information. The body is information. If you die, your information is not going to die. So if we find a machine which can actually recongregate, which collect this data, maybe from wherever it is, maybe from the sea, from the house where you are buried, I think ancient humans knew this information, because they decided the idea of preserving bodies and burying them into grave. I think early humans had this wisdom. They knew that there is life after death, because science have now discovered that the body, everything, living and non-living things, are actually data. So if you die, you're buried, there, your data is there, is stored there. Actually, there is a cell in the brain. When your body is experiencing a crisis, that cell will shut down. That is why you become brain dead. It is trying to save your data, because if your data is destroyed, you're not going to be recovered. It's like computer. The human body is like a computer. I don't know what the cell is. If you're a researcher, you research it and leave a comment below. There's a brain, there's a cell in the brain. If there's a crisis, if your body is actually, you get a motor accident or you're shot, and your body is actually being damaged, your cell, the information in your body is being damaged, the brain shuts up to save your life. Then you die. So death is actually trying to save your life. Instead of destroying it, death is there to save your life, because it is trying to preserve your data. So when we discover what we need to have to restart your life, then we can gather those data from where they are kept. Well, this is bordering on fiction, but it is scientific, and do your research. I am talking about hope, because the thing which actually produces desperation is mortality, and that's why probably people behave in ways they behave, because people are so confused about their life. Because when you are 40 years, you're 50, you begin to think of what might happen to you. So people begin to lose their sense of humanity and stop to value their humanity. But this behavior is inherited by children, and children not knowing why adults are no longer caring. because they think they're gonna die soon. And this is what I think is happening. And children now even inherit this culture of neglecting yourself. People begin to take drugs. They become alcoholic. They are frustrated. They become selfish. Not care about children. And also now the family is suffering. The family is actually on the verge of collapse. There is a lot of problem with the family. The family is a very fundamental social fabric. And these are some of the things we need to really understand, think about, because it is our life. We are privileged to be born. We are privileged to live. If you value your life, listen to this video. It may not make much sense, but listen to it and pay attention to it. It doesn't mean you should be studying all the time. You can play, you can pray, you can do whatever you do. You can go to go to party. Some people go to the library. Some people go to school. I mean, some people retire and go back to school to learn because they like learning, which is a good thing. If you have option, you can go to work in the park, as long as there is security from the state, with security factor also increasingly, because the government is closing down the public sector. Increasingly, your security is going to be your responsibility. Maybe you get a dog to protect you if you are now getting older, or you go to the gym and swim and do exercise so that you can be strong to defend yourself. Because you see, once the government privatizes the economy, it actually privatizes the country, such that the police will have to be paid. If you are calling 999, you're calling for the police in the future. That's what I think is going to happen. Probably is now happening. If you are a police officer watching this video, leave a comment below what is happening to the police. Probably the police, sooner or later, will be paid for. And if that happens, it means the poor, if you cannot afford the police, which is actually the cost of living, probably under a crisis, you may not afford the police. You may not, I'm talking about emergency services. The police, the fire, you may not afford. Right now, if you lock yourself in your house and you call the fire, you have to pay. In some instances now, if you wish police hours, I think you're going to be fined and you may have to pay. And now, if you go to the hospital, doctors begin to ask you questions. They will interrogate you. What you eat, how you eat your food, how you keep your home, how do you maintain it? Are you the one causing illness? We are beginning to become a citizen who are expected to take responsibility for their life. This is the mindset of the government. Take responsibility for your life. Take responsibility for your life. The government is no longer responsible for you. Take responsibility for your life. They are teaching us to begin to think in this specific manner. Do not expect us, the government, Conservative Party in particular, are found or accusing us of expecting a nanny state. Nanny is actually a carer. Somebody, if you're a baby, if you're a child, you have a nanny. In the UK, you have a nanny. Somebody who cares for you because you are still a baby. I find this to be insulting from the Conservative Party in the UK, criticizing the state to be a nanny state when the state provides public sector, public services. Because you see, the government, especially the Conservative government, is beside itself, because nobody sent them to rule over the country. British people did not ask the government to rule over them. The British people woke up one morning and found that the monarchy, what is now the monarchy, are ruling them by force. Now they have introduced something called democracy. But I think democracy is fake, and it is a system which is a cover-up. What we still have is the government is ruling us by force. That's why you have forces, police forces, military forces, security forces. What are you using these forces for? The legal system, which is actually a form of enforcement mechanism, litigation system, which is actually with the government privatizing the economy and also we are closing down the legal aid. Poor people have no access to justice, which means we are going back to the past situation of slavery as it occurred in the past. We are going backward, and we are going backward there, and using the law to oppress. Because if you are rich, you can access justice. You see, if you're poor, the rich can accuse you of anything, and you can even go to prison because you can't defend yourself in court. The legal system is extremely expensive and it's very complex. If you are already 40 years, if you decide to learn the law, you will not be able to do that because you have to go to work. And you have to work all the time. You're so tired. And you're thinking of many things. You can't study. And going back to university is impossible because the government also shutting down schools by failing to finance schools in universities. This is happening now because that is what privatization means. Privatization means even schools are shutting down, including universities are shutting down. We used to have grants, which is money given freely to educate adults in university. Now, the grants have been removed. We are now having student loan. Student loan you pay with interest. There are conditions which people still, the thing with the government, he does things gradually. He has a plan, but he implements this thing bit by bit. So that people are not aware. So it is our responsibility to know what the government is doing. We have to be enlightened. It is our insurance policy. Because if not, the government becomes our adversary by default. And if you are not chosen to rule with a few who are actually born to rule, you are excluded effectively from everything, including education. You cannot go and study to be a doctor. And if you are not a medical doctor, you have to depend on a medical doctor who studied at the university. These eminent individuals are now hard to come by because if you phone your general practitioner, your GP, which in the UK is a family practice in medicine, which are actually family doctors, you stay on the phone for over 2 hours, and an administrator is going to answer the phone at the general practice and answer to say there is no appointment. You ask them to book an appointment, they will refuse and say they don't give pre-appointment. They don't provide appointment. If you want appointment, you have to call the next day. You call the next day, you wait for another 2 hours on the phone, and you are told the same thing. In practice, right now, the GP practice in the UK is shut down. If you get it, it is locked. And if you get appointment with a doctor, you are not going to get proper service because the doctor will be asking you sets of questions. What do you eat? What time do you bathe? How long do you sleep? Are you the one? They are indirectly implying you're sick because you are creating sickness. You are responsible. You're sick because you are negligent. So there is a policy creeping into the National Health Service where the government will charge you for using the service because politically it has been telling the British people the National Health Service is free at the point of need. Apart from the United Kingdom government redefining the meaning of need, which is now meaning need that people who had medical need, maybe 5 years ago, suddenly this year they are no longer considered to be people in need. This is happening mainly in housing, where there is a major crisis in housing now, but also something called benefit, because people who are actually, especially sickness benefit, the doctor is going to tell the DWP is going to send somebody who report to the Department of Works and Pension, which is a government department responsible for employment and benefit and pension. Pension is a form of benefit, but it is classified for administrative reasons to be pension. It is benefit. Child benefit is also benefit. Maternity pay is also benefit. Funeral pay is also benefit. These are all different types of benefit, which I say should have been, maybe child benefit. Because even if there is child benefit, I don't think there should have been child benefit unless you have a child. You have a child, yes, if the government want to help, the government can increase your benefit because you have a child. Why do you pay child benefit? Because there is, I would say, fraud from the government, because the government behave like street thugs sometimes, because there is a sense of corruption with the government. Because where do you find the logic to say a child needs less money? The children in the UK are paid £21 per week, which is about £80 per month, 80 to 90 pounds per month child benefit. Adults are paid about, if you're a single person, you're paid about £80 per week, which is about 160, 320, about £300. These are actually living allowance. If an adult is paid 300 living allowance minus rent, because rent actually varies where you live. But if you live in a public housing, your rent should be flat rate, essentially, because you shouldn't even pay rent in terms of logic. If you're homeless, why should you pay rent? You're homeless, you can't afford rent. The government should actually build houses for everybody who work for living, especially people on minimum wage. Should be built house and given them. You don't charge council tax. You don't charge rent. You don't charge for other services, communal services, because these people are poor. In a rich country like Britain, the policy should be streamlined, such that government build public housing and allocate this public housing. You don't even have to apply because of computer, because of technology. Your record is with the hospital, with the NHS. Your record is probably with the police. Your record is probably with the tax office. If that is not available, then there is a notice given to every adult in the UK who is living in the UK. And today, if you are not given permission to stay in the UK, you're not going to get any benefit. That means the message to foreigners who are poor is that don't come to the United Kingdom. You're not welcome. Because how can you live without healthcare, without housing, without food, without anything? You are destitute. That's why there's a major crisis with immigration, and the government is actually using immigration as a political tool to manipulate the British people, also to teach the British bad manners of rejecting foreigners. But I would not say the British people are unique in rejecting foreigners. In Africa, in Europe, in America, human beings are actually poorly educated culturally, because if people had learned peace, they would accept strangers without qualification. But we are in trouble as a species because we are very territorial. The British people are no different. Although they like to think they are generous. What kind of generosity? Every time people visit Britain, you are complaining. And in America, the same. In Asia, the same. In Africa, the same. If you go to Africa, you're a foreigner. Africans do not want you. into their home. Humanity is territorial, and that is actually a major problem. And that's the problem. People are always constantly fighting. People are now fighting in Israel and Ukraine because of territorialism. This is my space. Don't encroach it. We are like animals. And this is a major problem. I've been talking about this. We need cultural learning. We need cultural revolution. We need to revise our culture as a species. This is nothing to do with Britain, nothing to do with anybody, but everything to do with humanity, wherever you are. British people, American, African, Europeans, we have a problem as humanity. Because why would you allow other people to come to your area? They can move in and stay with you in every country, but this is not the case. It's now one of the most violent policies on earth is immigration policy, including in Africa, including in Europe, including Asia. All the continents are the same. Some continents are more hostile than others. In my opinion, I think the Europeans are more sensitive, especially the British, because the British have been fighting more than other countries. The British are probably most sensitive in terms of territorialism. And not Africans are coming here because of the British going to Africa to create something called the British Commonwealth. When the British went to Africa to produce the British Commonwealth, we thought in Africa that the wealth of Britain is actually commonly shared with us Africans, the former colonies. I don't know if there was the Commonwealth involving the French colonies, the Portuguese, the Dutch. All these European powers actually rule over Africa, and they told Africans that no, we are now leaving, but we are going to be your friends. You can come to us and we can come to you, but see, the relationship is one-sided, lopsided even today. It is easier for a British to get a visa to go to Africa, and the British people want to go to Africa. They want to go to other parts of the world. They don't want people to come to their countries. And the same with the rest of Europe and America, the rest of Asia. But I think Europeans, because Europeans have been the main colonizing powers, they are more brutal when it comes to immigration, territorialism. In terms of hostilities, Europeans are the ones followed by the Americans, but also Asian countries. Because this system was developed by Rome, developed by British, and now the United Nations. What happened in Europe, like I said previously, is actually happening in Africa. There is an immigration hostility which is now creating a lot of violence, a lot of confusion, and a lot of insecurity. And immigration created Brexit. The immigration issue created Brexit in the United Kingdom because immigration in Europe and actually across the globe is directly associated with racism in every country, but worse in some countries than others, especially Britain. Because Britain has been historically the most powerful nation. The more powerful you are, the more territorial you are. Imagine Britain, when it was an empire, all nations in Africa, in Asia, and in America, actually, Britain colonized the United States of America, what is now United States. United States of America got independence from Britain, and also Canada got independence from Britain. So Britain is the most territorial. You could argue in that set that it's probably the most racist. They do not understand it because they don't go abroad. If they go, I mean, the British people are friendly, but if you go to places in countries in Africa today, you will be shocked how friendly Africans are. Because Africans have not been involved in colonialism. That is the reason they are the least violent continent in the world. The violence now in Africa is coming from military dictatorship, which is actually practiced up and down the continent. And it is only now that Africa is building its empires within Africa and intensifying the incident of concentrating power into the hands of the few, which is done through militarism. And Africa is changing in that context. And territorialism and maybe racism will also increase. I'm not sure. But Africa is the most welcoming continent in the world by virtue of their history and also culture, which is not being really impacted by extreme violence, extreme violence as you find in Europe, especially in Europe and America, but also in countries like Russia. At least the Europeans and Canadian and the US, generally European, they take in more African because, like I said, these are former colonies, and they are actually told, Africans are told by European power, especially Britain, that we are your family. Our wealth are actually common. The wealth in Africa can be accessed by the Europeans, and the wealth of the Europeans can be accessed by the Africans. That is what Commonwealth means. But now, because of things unknown to someone like me, it appears to me that the Europeans are accessing wealth in Africa more than Africans accessing wealth. So the partnership, the family is really lopsided. Europeans are more family than Africans because Europeans have more power than Africans. Africans have less power, so they are treated more favorably, less favorably than their brothers and sisters in Europe. Because you see, if you have a commonwealth, you should be families and friends in the least. So Africans should be coming here without restriction. Any African. That's why Africans are always coming to Europe, because the European power told Africa that we are your brothers and sisters. We are a family. But I don't know. I don't think if the Europeans were telling us the truth, because they are our former masters. We are their former slaves. It appears to me that the Europeans are really keen on maintaining slavery, slave-master relationship between Africa and Europe indirectly. But Africans probably are discovering that the wealth of Europe and Africa is common, but it is more common for the Europeans than for Africans, such that the Europeans are now getting wealth from Africa. Africa are not able to get wealth from Europe, and Africa are being impoverished because of Europeans, because they take natural resources, minerals, gold, diamond, all sort of precious metal. Petroleum is taken from Africa. Africa is now a war zone 24/7 because the Europeans are scrambling for Africa for the second time. The Russians have joined hands, the Asians are owning in on Africa. Africa is the second largest continent in the world, and it has the second most prosperous wealth in potential in the world also. Yeah, with the population number, the second most populous, if not the populous, the most populous continent in the world is Africa, followed by Asia, or vice versa. Asia is probably most populous. If you check your information online, you will find out that if you're interested. So we've been talking about this because these things are actually mixed up with power relations, and now we've been talking about the situation of government, how it affects things like energy, food, the system of the economy. And I was looking at the system of billing in the United Kingdom. We talk about gas, electricity, and water. Water is a non-priority bill because at the moment, if you're in debt with water, the law of this country says water cannot be disconnected. So far, so good, but more and more, the government is actually putting pressure on households to pay their bills. And there are means now of recovering that, which is becoming more and more hostile. Bailiffs, the bailiffs are becoming more and more prevalent, and they are actually creating a lot of havoc. See, it's like Britain is like a war zone. When you look at that, it's a bombshell of indebtedness in this country, which is created by poverty, and which is a fundamental component of the cost of living crisis. Indebtedness is more serious than anything else because it's impacting. People are actually being left in the cold because their energy actually is being disconnected. That's why energy is priority debt, because they have to be paid. If not, the law set by the UK government, energy should be disconnected. Water, sooner or later, they may change the law also to include water, which means people may die of thirst. I think they're still afraid of that prospect. People die of thirst, but also the quality of water in the house is not exactly healthy. I think tap water in the house, in homes, are very dangerous for drinking, but increasingly probably also standard of water because of pollution and also overuse of chemicals. And these are actually some of the issues now facing households. The quality of water in taps for drinking is really, really, really very dangerous. Also, maybe for cooking as well. And it is destroying dental health, oral, the crisis of oral health. No, oral health. And we don't have dentists now. If you don't have money, you are not going to access dentistry in this country. And also junk food, pre-processed food are being produced with sugar, and sugar with Fiji drinks actually are really very dangerous. Things like sweet things and things with Fiji like soda and things like that are now rotting tree. Oral health in the UK is the ticking time bomb, especially now where people are you cannot no longer access dental service if you don't pay for it. Even if it is government dentistry, even if you pay for it, the waiting actually so long and the quality of service is really, really poor. And they don't now do very much. They just pull out your tooth and they don't even bother to implant it. The care actually is next to zero. Actually, it is almost useless to visit a dentist. If you don't have money, if you have money, just go to a private dentist. But if you don't have money, at least if you are from the middle class, where you earn some good money, then maybe you can afford. But dental treatment is extremely costly, and people who cannot afford private dentistry now cannot access dentistry. People who cannot access private clinics for private services, it doesn't matter how poor you are, you can no longer access medical service, including emergency service. Ambulances have been privatized, and beds in hospitals have been privatized. That's why now the government is now encouraging people to stay at home, to use their homes as hospitals, and to use their beds as it doesn't matter how sick you are. Nurses are said to be visiting. Doctors are said to be visiting, but they are not there. There are no nurses. There are no doctors. If you are sick, you are brought home basically to die. This is what is happening now. The government is using the media to say something else. Either they don't know what is happening in the country, or they are not. They don't care anymore. What you hear on the news is different from what people experience. The government makes promises. We are working very hard to improve the situation. People are waiting. year on year, year on year, year on year. The government making promises and they don't deliver. They make promises. They have been making promises to cut waiting lists in the hospital, to waiting time in the hospital and waiting lists in housing. Waiting lists in housing, waiting lists on housing. You can wait for council property in the UK for 20 years. In a temporary property or in a private property, the council will tell you you are not a priority. You are not actually homeless. And private businesses, especially small and medium ones, who provide relatively affordable private property, do not have money to repair. So their property actually in disrepair. The government is not helping them. If you buy your house on a mortgage, the government does not support you at all. The government should be supporting small and medium property owners who are trying to support the market for the many of this country who are actually poor, as to complement public housing. Instead, the government is concentrating wealth into the hands of the super rich, who are actually multimillionaires, who are actually the 10% of the population who build the type of house fit for multimillionaires and multimillionaires. They get loans. They probably also get grants, I don't know, because they get whatever they like. They probably get grants to build infrastructure, to build housing stock. This will build mansions and luxury apartments for the super rich, mainly foreign tycoons from Russia, from around the world. So the world is now being inherited by the few who are multimillionaires and multi-billionaires. I keep saying this. I try to resist this because I've been repeating it, but I'm happy I'm doing it because this video is for social media, for YouTube, and people watching it because it's so the pace is so fast. Because some people will not watch my video anyway. My hope is that somebody is going to watch this video because it goes very quickly, it disappears, the feeds are so fast. That's why I have to record videos frequently so that, and I have to repeat a lot of the points because people will miss it. This is the nature of social media. People will actually miss it because there are so many people. The traffic is so huge, you know, on YouTube. That's why people who actually watch my video regularly will be thinking, we are watching this again and again and again. They are the similar information, the same, some of them, because they are very fundamental. People need to really know. And I'll try my best to really move on. Every time I program them, I'm going to be fast-paced. But sometimes when I go through certain materials, I find that they give information, but because this video is educational, I'm not giving information. This is something people should know. I'm not here to give information. I'm actually trying to educate and analyze the information. I'm not only going to give, okay, go at A, B, C, D. That's not what I'm trying to do. If I talk of health, I will identify the kind of health and explain what kind of health is like, energy bills, and how to deal with. I said there are grants being given by the government to energy companies. Energy companies are multi-millionaires and multi-billionaires. The government is giving them money. They are also giving the council some money. They are giving different money to different sources, which makes it even more complicated. If you need help, you don't even know where to start because there are so many scattered all over. And most of this help can only be accessed online. And when you talk of online, it's so difficult. You have to have the skill to understand how online to trade. Because also online, there are so many scams now. You go online, you think you are actually accessing maybe government website, and it is not the government website. You think you are accessing British gas. It is not British gas. It's fake. And this is our the problem, because there are people who need help are so vulnerable, because some of them don't even know computer. Computer is a new thing. People who know it thoroughly. Internet particularly, most people do not really know. Even I don't know. I know only the basics, and because I do some training on the internet, about the computer. Otherwise, I wouldn't even know. And people who get help, some of them do not know how to use the internet, especially people, the elderly. Mostly young people may know, but they may not know things like how to identify whether a website is secure or not. Especially people who are very young, who are going there to look for whatever they want to look. So there's those risks of security. And some people may ask you to pay some money to access certain services. And don't do that. Those are scams. Because these monies are given freely. They are grants, they are not loans. If you speak to people, some people do not understand the difference between loan and grant. Loan is you pay back. But some people say, oh, the government is going to give me loan. Do I have to pay it back? Yes, the government is going to give me benefit. They are going to loan me benefit. I say, no. Benefits are not loaned, they are granted. So you give it, you get it, you don't pay it back. And so these are some of the things which actually common people in this country face. They are vulnerable, they need extra support. And I'm not appealing to the government, but if a government minister is watching this, or an MP, if you think there is something important, I don't know how you're going to contact me, because your public figures, you may not really want to be seen to be engaging with people online. And these are some of the things. But if you are ordinary, if you have an MP in the UK, everybody have access to. They have access to member of parliament. If you watch this video, you think it's important, share it with family and friends, and maybe form little communities to discuss what I'm discussing. Approach your MP, do your own research, become a leader in your community. Even if you're a young person, if you are adult, if you are an elderly, because the government now wants you to take responsibility for your life. That's why I'm happy that I've been talking about the situations, because I'm taking responsibility for myself in discussing this material, and also in undertaking this educational. This is actually about peace. It's about help available in the UK. It's about looking at government policy and government attitude. I'm looking at almost everything, but as I promise, more and more going forward in this segment of my material. I'll be focusing more on UK specific source of help. But from time to time, I will be trying to explain so that people understand the context of everything I'm saying. And thank you for watching this video. I'm going to stop this video here. I will see you in the next one. Thank you. Bye. Subscribe to this channel and share with family and friends. Take care. Bye bye.